Good morning, everyone. My name is Eve Lucho, and I serve as the Senior Program Coordinator of Partnerships and Community Building with the Michelson 20mm Foundation. I am a female with dark long hair and a navy blue shirt. This morning, I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming you all to our webinar, Collaborative Solutions, Addressing Community College Student Housing Insecurity Through University Partnerships. I would like to acknowledge that this event today is being held on the traditional lands of the Tongva people and pay my respects to elders both past and present. We would like to honor all ancestor stewards of this land on which we meet today and their descendants living in over 1,000 tribes, nations, bands, pueblos, communities, or native villages. Thank you so much for joining us for what will be a rich and timely, inspiring discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to share a bit about our foundation and briefly preview what we have in store for you today. Founded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson and Alia Michelson, the Michelson 20mm Foundation is dedicated to ensuring that everyone, particularly our most vulnerable population, has access to equitable post-secondary educational opportunities that lead to meaningful careers. We proudly operate at the cutting edge of higher education to help forward-thinking innovators, nonprofits, and startups close the opportunity gap. For over a decade, we have served 20 million minds, the approximate number of post-secondary students in the US, by advancing basic needs, open education resources, smart justice, digital equity, and intellectual property. We hope you find the conversation today engaging and helpful in your work. We invite you to join the discussion and share your stories on LinkedIn, X, and Facebook using the hashtag student housing. Since we're amongst researchers, this webinar would not be complete without an evaluation. We ask that you take some time towards the end of the webinar to complete the survey. With housekeeping notes aside, we can now dive into today's topic. It is my distinct privilege to introduce Kelly King. Kelly is the Chief Advancement Officer for the Los Angeles Community College District and Executive Director of the Foundation of the Los Angeles Community Colleges, leading programs and philanthropic partnerships that support our over 200,000 students across the district. Before joining LACCD in 2022, she served as a Senior Program Officer for Education at California Community Foundation, managing large-scale efforts to advance equitable education in Los Angeles County. Kelly was also the Executive Vice President at Focusing Philanthropy, overseeing a national portfolio of philanthropic investments in education, health access, and workforce development. She began her career in education and nonprofit leadership at the Scripps College Academy, leading the College Access Program to national recognition. Kelly holds a bachelor's degree in politics and public policy analysis from Scripps College and a master's in educational policy, evaluation, and reform from Claremont Graduate University. Please join me in welcoming Kelly King, who will provide context for this research and will introduce us to her wonderful research team.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us. Greetings from Los Angeles. I get the pleasure of kicking us off this morning. First, I want to provide some context. So here at the Los Angeles Community College District, we have more than 900 square miles to cover. We have 9 colleges, the largest in the nation, 200,000 students with half reporting incomes near or below the poverty line. And we know from surveys that 64% of our students, if not more, experience a basic needs insecurity during their time with us. 40% are experiencing food insecurity, 55% some form of housing insecurity, and 13% have experienced homelessness in the past year. So as Chief Advancement Officer for the district and the leader of our district-wide foundation, I was on a quest a couple years ago to map all of the resources and supportive services happening across our district to support students in addressing these needs. This is an abbreviated version of what we found, and we've mapped this so we can begin to assess where do we have strengths, where can we expand, and what new opportunities can we bring to our colleges. So as a quick tour, on the left-hand side, you see an arrow. We mapped our current strategies from the bottom, rapid short-term assistance. This is going to be low barrier, but probably not a sustained solution to a need, all the way up to longer-term assistance. In the green boxes or rooms, you can see some of the work our colleges do in partnership with others. So we make a lot of public resource referrals. We have peer navigators, and that can span from short-term assistance, like public shelters, tiny homes across from our campuses, or hotel vouchers, all the way up to more lasting solutions like public housing or Section 8 rental vouchers. We also make a lot of referrals in our other green box to community-based organizations who provide everything from rapid short-term to much longer-term assistance. In the blue, you can see the strategies that were already active across our campuses. From the short to mid-term range, there's a whole host of different financial support and direct aid solutions, everything from an emergency grant today to some more sustained assistance, like our newest Guaranteed Basic Income program. And then we also have our own rapid housing program, hotel vouchers. We work with community-based organizations to sponsor beds that our students have priority access to, and even master lease apartments with community-based organizations. However, we still knew that there was more we needed to do. And so in the orange and the red are two of the strategies we're currently working on. And the roof of this, what keeps it all together, is a district and a leadership team that really insists on the systems, culture, policies, and practices that promote an understanding of student needs and a comprehensive set of supports. So in addition to LACCD-owned housing, which is under development and consideration, we saw this red box was glaring with opportunity of CSU and university housing partnerships. And it was through a Spark Grant from the Michelson 20MM Foundation that we got to poke a little bit at that potential housing solution for some of our students. So let me tell you a little bit about that work, but first let me tell you how we think this works in practice. One of the benefits of this exercise we did as a district is we knew that no one of these solutions was going to be the solution in total or serve every student equally. About a third of our students are parents themselves. Their housing needs are very different than a single person who may or may not have family support. The arrows represent what might be a typical journey through these services. A student might come through the point of entry of a veteran resource center, a pride center, a basic needs center, a caring professor who says, hey, do you need some help? They may be directed first to some financial tool. Then we make a referral to a community-based organization resource. Maybe we get them into one of our sponsored housing partnerships. We eventually want to get them maybe something more sustained like a public resource, a Section 8 voucher. But what we really want to do is graduate them from this system. So it is this comprehensive model that we're seeking to build. And today's webinar is going to focus on that red box. And the red box of university housing partnerships, we had honestly talked about for a long time. But it turns out there's a lot to consider. And so it was through a Spark Grant from the Michelson 20MM Foundation that we brought on two leaders in this space to help us answer what's currently happening in California and what can we learn as we build out our own model here in Los Angeles. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Maureen Carew and Rhea Blatt. Maureen is the principal consultant. One moment. Maureen is the principal consultant of Carew Consulting, where she helps mission-driven organizations navigate leadership transitions, strengthen operations, and align strategy for lasting impact. With more than 25 years of experience in philanthropy, education, and nonprofit leadership, she supports organizations in stabilizing and growing their impact. Maureen previously led a $35 million grant-making strategy for an education-focused foundation and held senior roles at Stanford University Gardner Center, San Francisco Unified School District, and several nonprofits. She is known for her equity-driven approach, cultural humility, and expertise in coaching, advising, and board development, and I turn to her with great frequency myself. Maureen holds an MPA from San Francisco State University and completed executive programs at Harvard, Stanford, the Third Sector Company as well. Based in San Francisco, she volunteers with San Francisco CASA and the Red Cross. And because this was a complex issue, we're fortunate to have a second research lead to guide us in this exploration of what's happening and what's possible. Ria Blatt is founder and principal consultant of Mandela Strategies, bringing over 20 years of experience at the intersections of philanthropy, nonprofit leadership, and public policy. She partners with foundations, universities, nonprofits, and research organizations to launch new programs, develop strategy, assess impact, and conduct applied research. In addition to consulting, Ria has led leadership roles in philanthropy and policy advocacy, including founding director of public policy at the College Futures Foundation and deputy director at California Competes, a policy research and advocacy organization focused on higher education and workforce outcomes. She holds an MPP from Georgetown University and a BA in economics from UCLA. And it truly took both of these really amazing leaders to assess how can we do these university partnerships to expand housing for community college students. And I'm so glad for them to be able to share a bit of what they learned and what we can learn from the work of others in today's session. So join me in welcoming our research team.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that introduction and context, Kelly. I'm going to get us started with a little bit of background information, and then I will hand it over to Maureen to get into some of the findings and moderate the panel. So as Kelly mentioned, this project focused on better understanding the opportunities and the challenges around establishing higher ed partnerships that leverage underutilized university dorms to house community college students, or co-housing partnerships for short. And we spoke with about 10 institutional leaders from the community colleges and the CSUs around the state, some of whom are in the midst of co-housing partnerships, others who are exploring or have explored the strategy. And we will start by sharing what we learned through this project, and then again, spend the bulk of the time in this webinar really hearing from the field experts who are engaging in this work real time. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as you listen to the findings in the panel, keep these 4 themes in mind. The first is feasibility. Co-housing partnerships aren't just a pie in the sky idea. They're really actually feasible. They are practical. They directly address an urgent housing need. And there are already active examples in California, and you'll hear about a few of them today. Complexity. Yes, it is feasible, but institutions do need to go in with eyes wide open and have a willingness to problem solve, because the strategy is also challenging at times, and our panelists will provide some insight on that. Intentional design matters. So student-centered planning and strong collaboration are essential to ensuring these partnerships support student success, going beyond just housing logistics. And Maureen will share more on that in a sec. And then finally, mutually beneficial. When done well, everyone wins with co-housing partnerships. Students gain stable housing. For CSUs, especially in a post-COVID landscape of shifting enrollment, these collaborations make effective use of existing housing capacity. And then also for community colleges, these partnerships, of course, can avoid the cost and the expertise that is needed to build and manage housing from scratch. Next slide, please. Thank you. So although only a handful of institutions are currently pursuing co-housing partnerships, there has been statewide movement to create the opportunity to make this approach possible in more geographic locations, and we call those enabling conditions. The first is around funding availability. In 2021, the state allocated funding for affordable student housing. Many of us on this call know that later budget reductions shifted that support to state-issued bond financing, but nonetheless, that change really still somewhat drives down colleges' out-of-pocket costs and ultimately reducing student fees. Since fall 2018, the Cal Grant Student Success Completion Grant has provided eligible students with funding for education and living expenses. So those are just a couple of examples, definitely not saying that the total cost of attendance is fully affordable for students or that institutions have all the resources they need for housing. We know that that is not the case, but there has been some movement on available public dollars. The second condition we wanted to mention is basic needs awareness. So the pandemic, as well as the research and the advocacy that followed, brought a wider spread awareness of how basic needs insecurity affects student success. And that awareness and also legislation enabled more basic needs centers across California's colleges, and co-housed students may be able to access basic needs center services both at their community college and the university where they live. Transfer students. So, universities are increasingly prioritizing transfer student success, for example, establishing transfer success centers. And then really that creates strengthened relationships and stronger support for students moving from the community colleges to CSU, making co-housing a practical next step in intersegmental coordination. The last thing I'll mention is probably everyone on this call is aware of and possibly involved in growing statewide strategies around strengthening the education pipeline. So we have initiatives like Guided Pathways, tools like the program's Pathway Mapper, the CSU Transfer Planner, California College Promise, dual admissions, K-16 collaboratives. All of these efforts are working towards a smoother transition from community college to universities. And so really together, they are creating a more enabling environment for innovation and solutions like co-housing partnerships to be able to take root. And now I will turn it over to Maureen to share some of the challenges and best practices uncovered through this project.
Thanks so much, Ria. You're right. There is a pretty welcoming environment for this work to happen, given what you outlined in the enabling conditions. Despite that, it's super challenging for institutions to come together and work together. There are three kind of buckets of those challenges. The first being institutional culture. I mean, each has a different mission and values, and they're sometimes in contradiction to each other. So bringing together bureaucratic institutions it's inherently difficult. The governance and staffing structures is another piece. As we know, CSU and UC are governed centrally by statewide boards, and then the community colleges are governed by locally elected boards. They have different staffing structures. They have unique collective bargaining agreements for each institution. All of these things complicate efforts to align operations. Different academic calendars and the inability to easily create joint staffing roles are two very specific examples of the barriers to effective collaboration. The next thing is procedural rigidity and risk aversion. I laugh because that's an understatement. The institutions operate within well-established rules and procedures. Developing innovative modules that require interdependence and flexibility across organizations is really challenging, especially when control and outcomes cannot be guaranteed. Bureaucracies are by design cautious. Standard operating procedures prioritize stability and compliance, which makes cross-institutional collaboration seem risky and unmanageable, especially when success depends on another institution's follow-through. But we did discover some really great things that are happening on the ground. And like Ria said, we're going to hear from practitioners soon, and we'll even hear from a student. But I'll go over quickly the best practices that we learned. So developing a shared vision, Kelly touched on this as well. Many community colleges and CSUs have explored partnerships with varying levels of success, But we found that having a unified vision focused on student success and having endorsement from the top can really make a difference. When institutional leaders champion a collaboration, it goes beyond a shared vision. It sets the tone, it provides direction, and it clears a path through bureaucratic and logistical challenges. It empowers the team to apply their expertise and remove key obstacles. It goes from can we do this to how do we do it? Engaging the right team members is also very important. Successful intersegmental housing partnerships are fundamentally student success strategies. They require the right mix of voices at the table. Of course, you need legal and facility folks, but you also need mid-level admin and frontline cross-functional team members that reflect the full scope of the initiative. They'll come together and they will develop clear institutional agreements. The institutional agreements or the MOUs or the master lease agreement will outline responsibilities and procedures. These will include eligibility criteria, student selection processes, payment pathways, staffing, residence hall management, discipline procedures, Title IX compliance, and housing access timelines, meal plan policies, things like that. The next thing that we learned was really to be student-centered, right? The agreements are great as they outline how things are going to happen, but this is really about building community for students. So if you can base the design on student input, you'll be much more successful. So engage students early and often to inform design and continuous improvement. It's not just build it and they will come. You really want to draw on student success research and incorporate best practices and university expertise into the program design. Think about maybe cohort-based housing models, learning communities that foster belonging and academic motivation. Provide a joint orientation so students don't have to go to an orientation about housing and then another one about what it means to be a community college student. Have one for the students who are living in university housing. Maximize access to campus services. Like Ria said, maybe basic needs centers. Students can access both at their community college and the campus where they're living. Study spaces, tutoring, transfer support. Puente and Emoja programs, fitness centers, and student activities. Co-programming is happening. Actually, we may hear about that later from practitioners, where they're bringing together both university and college students to, do fun activities together. You could partner with community-based organizations to provide culturally relevant support and essential services. And another idea that came up was to have one designated person or a liaison for students. So they're not dealing with community college staff for this and university staff for that, but have one person to be their go-to person. And lastly, plan for sustainability. Again, it's not a build it and you're done. Collect data from the beginning so that you have some information to use to improve practices, track outcomes that could possibly influence improvement and policy, develop contingency plans because things change, and keep leadership informed. You don't want them to not know what's going on and have something surprise them. Okay, so now we are going to move into our panel discussion. So I am going to introduce the panelists. A quick note to remind everyone, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. We'll do our best to answer questions as they come up, or we'll have some time reserved at the end that we will gather the questions from the audience and ask the panelists. Okay, so I'm really honored right now to be in community with these practitioners. I appreciate the time that they've devoted to this work so far, just in helping us learn about best practices and what's going on in the field, and again, to be here today. So I'll start with their brief bios, and then they can talk about what is actually going on at their campuses. So I would like to welcome Dr. Thomas Cruz Soto as the Dean of Students at Riverside City College. He leads programs that support veterans, foster youth, and first-gen students. He also oversees student conduct. He co-chairs the RCC Cares team and served as interim vice president of student services, guiding strategic planning and policies. In 24-25, Tomas stepped in to lead the $124 million intersegmental housing initiative, which you'll hear about today, and Aspire Housing Project, expanding affordable housing for students. Before RCC, he was Associate Vice President and Dean of Students at Cal Poly Pomona and spent a decade at Colgate University, advancing diversity initiatives and alumni engagement. Earlier, he directed Gear Up programs at Rowan and Keene universities, serving thousands of underrepresented students. A first-gen college graduate from Camden, New Jersey, Tomas holds degrees from Muhlenberg College and Rowan University. Welcome, Dr. Cruz Soto. Next, we have Dr. Lee Sata, who is the Vice Chancellor and Chief Facilities Executive for the Los Angeles Community College District, overseeing facilities and the nation's largest community college bond program across 9 colleges and additional sites. He leads planning, operations, and sustainability initiatives to support student learning and campus development. Before LACCD, Lee was the Vice President of Capital Projects and Operations at California College of the Arts and held leadership roles in public education, including interim assistant superintendent of facilities for the Sacramento City Unified School District and vice chancellor for the Peralta Community College District. In these roles, he managed major bond programs. Lee is a seasoned architect and program manager with decades of experience designing and implementing sustainable facilities in higher ed. His dissertation research focused on sustainability plans for community colleges, equipping him to lead LACCD into a new era of environmentally responsible development. Welcome, Dr. Sata. And finally, we have Dr. Matthew Smith. Dr. Smith is Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students at Cal State San Bernardino. He previously served as Senior Associate Vice President and Dean of Students at CSU Dominguez Hills, where he launched the Basic Needs Initiative, securing $600,000 for emergency housing, food, and student grants. He also helped secure California's Higher Ed Student Housing Grant to provide affordable housing for 300 students. Matthew co-founded the CSU Young Men of Color Consortium, raising over $4.5 million to improve outcomes for young men of color across all 23 campuses. Earlier, he directed educational partnerships at CSU Dominguez Hills, overseeing $10 million in grants and leading the nationally recognized Male Success Alliance. A first-gen college graduate, Matthew earned degrees from CSU San Bernardino, CSU Fullerton, and Claremont Graduate University. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your work again and your time that you've invested to share with us. So I'd like to begin by asking you to describe your experience with co-housing, and we have a few visual aids for that. Dr. Cruz Soto, would you like to start?
Sure. So this has been a 3-year labor of love, is what I call it affectionately, and with the vision of our district chancellor, envisioning this in partnership with the chancellor at the University of California, and obtaining the $124 million necessary for this venture. We are in the housing business, and we have been for some time. This initiative, getting the grant from the state, resulted in a 1,568 bed unit that's over at UCR now, called ND Phase 2, and will ultimately house about 326 of our RCCD students from Riverside City College, Norco College, and Moreno Valley College. This is the first in the state, first in the nation, which I proudly brag about. And it developed a clearer pipeline, or will develop ultimately a clearer pipeline for our students. Traditionally, in our district and throughout the state of California, students and community colleges are on a 5 to 7 year track. This fast pace, this opportunity will provide a faster pace and really get students to where they should be at a community college in a 2 to 3 year track. And also exposing them to the University of California, but to the UC system. And also providing opportunities for them to also explore any CSU within the state. As we know, there's 9 UCs and 23 CSUs, but really giving traditional community college students, first-gen students, the opportunity to see what a 4-year institution looks like, and also that it's not so foreign or out of reach for them, that this is something that they can obtain. Currently, we have 224 residents within the building C and D over at ND Phase 2. And the ultimate goal in 26, 27 is to get 326 students within the units, with 6 of them being RAs from RCCD, from one of our 3 schools within our district. Our basic needs center housed over 101 students in 24, 25. So we're in a friendly competition with them. And we're part of another program called Aspire that housed 2 of our residential scholars in downtown Riverside. So over 300 students have been housed at RCC or RCCD, and we hope in 26, 27 to be well over 500 students. The most housing insecure students have been our primary target. And then we've even ventured with permission from the state to also consider international students, out-of-state athletes, and folks in categorical and grant-funded programs like EOP&S and other groups. So yeah, the unit, as I said, has 1,568 beds. 326 of them will currently be for RCCD students moving forward. I'll stop after this last comment. Future initiatives as of October 1st, this will be included in CC Apply for students coming to our college so they can share their desire of wanting to be involved in housing. And we have future systems that we hope that will do this work for us, because right now it's very manual. This is on no one's job description, but we're all excited about the program, excited about the game-changing opportunity that it will be for our first-gen students. UCR proudly recognizes itself as #1 in the country for impacting social mobility, and RCCD, our mission by our chancellor is to eradicate poverty in our county and in our state, and to get students to ultimately earn a livable California wage. So I'll stop there. I can go on and on. I've had enough coffee this morning, and I'm excited enough about this project, but it's a great gift. The affordability of this program in downtown Riverside, which is unheard of, $750 a month for a shared occupancy with a roommate, $850 for a single. That's if students had to pay out of pocket. If they're Max Pell eligible, they're able to cover this through their financial aid. There is nowhere in Riverside where you can live, for this cost in the city of the arts, as Riverside is affectionately called. When this grant was written, when this initiative was established, it was basically 30% of 50% of the median income of Riverside County. It'll go up from year to year, but it'll stay affordable for those of the highest need. So I'll stop there.
Dr.
Wow.
Cruz-Luto, I would just jump in real quick with a question from the Q&A from Light Willis. It's a clarification question around, do students pay month to month, or is it a per semester thing?
Month to month. Month to month. If they are Max Pell eligible, meaning that so the criteria is 2.0 or better, 12 credits, so full-time students. It would behoove them if they completed their FAFSA, so we encourage all students to complete their FAFSA. If they're Max Pell eligible, the college cuts the check for them and sends it over to UCR. But we have some students that don't fully qualify for Max Pell, so there's some dollars that comes out of their pocket. It's a range. Or if folks don't qualify for any financial aid at all, these are the rates, $750 and $850. That would be at a monthly rate to the student. They would pay that at our cashier's window at our 3 colleges.
Great. Thank you. That is, there's a lot to dig in there. So thanks for that intro. We will circle back certainly for questions. Okay, turning it over to Dr. Sata to go over what is happening at LACCD. Dr.
Great.
Sata.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maureen. Really happy to be here and really appreciate the work that the Michelson Foundation is doing to help us and assist us, and for your hard work as well as Ria's in putting together the study. So many of the important points were covered both in your presentation as well as you've heard a summary from our executive director and chief advancement officer earlier, Kelly King. But in short, to get right into the housing program, we have started to develop, or we have developed actually, a strategic housing plan, which will be applied across our entire district. As you said earlier, we are the largest district in California and in the country, comprising 9 different colleges across a service area of just shy of 900 square miles. So we're having to move as quickly as we can, but at the same time, trying to take into consideration a very broad and diverse range of environments and students that attend all of our different campuses. The overall housing strategy developed by Beacon Rose, who's assisting us in that, as well as our PMO team, the Jacobs team, will create 3 strands of moving forward. The first strand is to look at the opportunity to purchase buildings that are located somewhat close to one of the campuses. The second strand would be to go into a partnership, as we've talked about earlier, with the neighboring higher ed institutions, whether they be Cal State or UCs. And then, of course, the third strand would be for us to build our own dorm. So we're pursuing all 3 strands simultaneously. We actually have an open RFP at this point in time and received an overwhelming number of responses. We had actually 85 submissions for potential property acquisition at or very close to our campuses. And I can't speak to the specifics of that because it's an open RFP, but we are getting those reviewed and have a committee taking a look at that. And we'll see if something materializes along those fronts. The exciting thing about that for us is that were that to come to pass, that's the fastest way for us to move forward into the student housing initiative, because we believe that with the purchase of an already completed building, we could potentially be operating in, let's say, a year's time or so. The second strand that I wanted to chat about is obviously been spoken about earlier, which is the collaborations. And we are in active discussions already with 2 of our Cal State partners, nearby campuses, and in different models. In one model, we're talking to a Cal State about some of their existing beds that they have openings for us. And we would simply rent some amount of space, whether it be individual rooms or even as much as a single floor of an existing dorm. And to some of the earlier points that you made, I mean, I think it's really important to recognize that, first of all, the good news is that there is institutional values alignment. We're all, trying to do everything that we can to house our students and allow them to complete their educational dreams and ambitions. And at the same time, these are big institutions and there's a lot of issues that we need to work through. Having, as you said earlier, that sort of lead right from the top, where the presidents themselves are involved in setting the tone, vice chancellors and vice presidents as well, definitely helps. And we've had tremendous support in that way, and have actually had presidents of our colleges and the presidents of the CSUs attend some of the early kickoff meetings to sort of help set the tone. So we're excited about that. And then finally, we're in the process of evaluating the 9 colleges to decide which of the campuses would be most suitable for the construction of a dorm. And that will take some time, but and it would actually allow us, by utilizing this multi-pronged approach, we can learn lessons from opening an earlier dorm, perhaps that we are able to purchase, which gives us a little bit of time to actually learn how to operate it. And then eventually when we build a dorm, which will take 4 to 5 years, then of course, we hopefully will have some lessons learned to put under our belt. A couple other points that were made earlier so well by Dr. Cruz Soto, for example, is that there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and we are speaking with many of our sister colleges that are already operating both at the higher ed institutions and as well in the community college system, so that we have the lessons learned and don't go into this completely, without some knowledge about, some best practices. And then the only other thing I guess I would add is that, one might ask what are the, why would these other Cal States or UCs want to partner with us? And I think the dual enrollment aspect is something that's been stated, right? Is that our students could really benefit from being on a 4-year college campus as a way of envisioning themselves attending that campus. And the UCs and the Cal States are looking for additional ways to bring in students. We are looking at a demographic fall off in the number of students that are attending colleges for many reasons. And, I think the UCs and the Cal States have some ambitions to partner even further with with the community college system. So we're participating in that as well. So that's kind of it for now. And as was said earlier, I'm very excited about what we're doing and happy to participate in more panel discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sata. And I'm going to call on Dr. Smith to talk about both your current work at CSU San Bernardino, and then say a few words about your work at Dominguez Hills when you were there.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. The two previous panelists have covered a lot of the great context around how this work comes about and why it's important. And so I'll just quickly say that this work with San Bernardino Valley College came out, it really was like a converging of two campuses who had needs and were finding ways to collaborate together to meet those needs. At San Bernardino, like many campuses, struggling with enrollment and trying to figure out solutions to that. And that spills over into university housing as you don't have beds that are filled. And then, and so what are some creative ways to think about filling those beds and being a resource to the community? And then at San Bernardino Valley College, seeing the need of community college students who are in need of housing and could really benefit from stable housing, especially in an academic setting. And so they came together to create the Den to Den housing pathway program. This is our pilot year. This fall is the first time we have students on campus living in university housing here at Cal State San Bernardino. And so it allows eligible San Bernardino Valley College students to live here. They get access to campus dining, the library, and we were able to do that by having them enroll into like a non-credit but kind of bearing course. We're just paying, so now they're just paying for the annual cost to live in housing, as well as about $1,000 in fees, almost $1,100 in fees that gives them access to certain campus resources. And they're also able to purchase a meal plan if they like to for our dining commons. And so we're working to find ways to make sure we're also integrating those students into the university housing community in terms of engagement opportunities. For example, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony where campus leaders and different folks from on and off campus were able to come and welcome them into the community on move-in day. And so it has been going well thus far. And last thing I'll just add is just the process by which students come to us here at Cal State San Bernardino. They must first apply at San Bernardino Valley College for this program. San Bernardino Valley will look at their eligibility, things like their conduct record, making sure they're enrolled as a full-time student, are enrolled as a matriculating student at San Bernardino Valley College. And then they send their information over to us for us to work through them with the housing application process. And so we're very excited about this partnership, and we're excited to welcome those students onto our campus this fall. Previously, when I was at Cal State Dominguez Hills, I was on the other side of this. So it almost feels like a different world now, looking back at fall of 2019. At that time, Cal State Dominguez Hills, we were busting at the seams in terms of enrollment. And we were in the process of building an additional residence hall. but it had not been completed yet. And we had a wait list for housing of over 400 students. Many of those students saying, I will not be able to enroll in your school if I do not have housing. And at this time, this was at a time where certain campuses were impacted, and our president, our campus really prided themselves on being able to provide access to students to ensure that they can attend a four-year institution. And so we did not want to turn students away. My president was famous for saying, don't give me the 8 out of 10 reasons why you can't, give me the 2 out of 10 why we can. And so when this issue came up with these students calling and saying, we don't think we're going to be able to enroll if we can't get into housing, he asked us to create a solution. And so I literally at this time did not have any model for this type of a partnership. Remember I was just sitting in my office and cold called Marymount California University. I knew they were a private institution about 9 miles from our campus. I knew very little about them, but I literally cold called. The vice president of student affairs was out on vacation, and I talked to their admin and said that this is why I'm calling and what I'm interested in. And as soon as he got back into the office, he called back and said, let's have a conversation. And so we scrambled to put together an MOU. And we ended up housing about 280 students on their campus that fall of our first year, mostly first year students. And then we had to create a shuttle process to shuttle them to and from those campuses. And so students also paid a fee to engage at that campus. Most of their campus life took place in university housing, and students paid a campus activities fee. And so our students also paid that fee. And were able to engage in those experiences. Now, we didn't get a full year of that because fall 2019, as soon as we were going into the second semester, COVID happened in March. And so everyone went home, but it was an excellent way for us to provide access to students and to ensure they can still engage in that college experience.
Wow. That must be tremendously helpful now that you're on the other side of it, that you've been through seeking housing from other institutions. Now that you're working with your community college partners, I can imagine it's tremendously helpful. Well,
Yes,
thank
it has
you
been.
all for the overview. And so now I think we want to take down the slides and open it up to a panel discussion. And if the panelists could turn on their cameras, I'm going to go off script here a little bit. I was going to ask a couple of questions, but since you've all provided so much good fodder for discussion, I'm wondering if you all have questions for one another, given what you heard. And I just want to pause here.
Well, I don't mind starting because you guys are both Dr. Cruz Soto and Dr. Smith are a little bit ahead of LACCD, and some of the things that we kind of constantly are asking ourselves is, first of all, there's sort of two different ways to look at it, right? There's the student experience as well as the capital project side, and I think we have capabilities on the capital project side. But I'm wondering how you built up the teams to support the students as you sort of worked in parallel to build while you were building the dorms, for example, and how much effort was that, and were there specific positions required, or were you able to just ask the colleges to flex and sort of have to grow into it, so to speak?
I'm smiling because you're looking at the team, but with other great colleagues that I have throughout the district. So it's really a heavy lift from executives and managers right now, and we're currently developing the positions, and we have to find the resources for those positions. So we're in need of a dean of residential housing and student life and wellness. So I'm hopeful that search will happen sooner than later at our district. And also, we're not near Christmas, but we're close enough. A resident director would be good for our office because, as I said, this is on nobody's JD. We're a highly unionized system, and all this will have to be negotiated, evaluated, and the best approach will probably be to hire some new people where this is 100% or the majority of their work. So right now, it's a heavy lift for managers. And I'm one of the managers, along with the Dean of Enrollment, our financial aid director, our director for business services, and then a host of other people that have helped us with this heavy lift. So yeah, so that's what it is. So if I have any advice for your institutions, develop the JDs now, and try to cultivate those positions early. It would be better, in my humble opinion, to have the positions in place before the residence is filled. So that would be my humble opinion.
Thank you.
And I would just add that, you know, for our partnerships, those, like when we sent students, for example, to Marymount California University, there was work on our end that we had to do to get people like the Title IX offices in conversation, the conduct people, and to figure out how do we address some of those things that may arise when they come up on another campus, and to work through those. And then like the on the ground, like, which is really important. And I think folks take for granted, like the RAs, the housing director, they were already there and in place. It just allowed them to hire a couple RAs. And it's similar to us here now at San Bernardino, where that infrastructure is already there. But an interesting piece is that we do have this third party housing facility across the campus from our institution where a lot of our students end up living. And we are in conversation with them now because even though they run a housing facility, they're not the folks who are running that facility aren't necessarily trained in higher ed student affairs housing. And so one of the ways that we're looking to partner with them is to begin training them, as well as inviting them to some of the professional conferences that our housing folks go to, so that they can better address some of the things that come up. So I think there's some capacity building there. And so as community colleges get into that space, I think it's important to kind of think about what additional development is needed there, and that doesn't just start on the front end with building and opening it, but it's also understanding that once students are living on our campuses, there are going to constantly be things that are coming up because students are no longer coming to campus for class and leaving. Everything that they have and who they are is now going to be present on your campus 24/7, from mental health to behavior to all of those things. And so I think sometimes folks who aren't used to that can begin to see that as like these students housing has a problem, or the professional staff in housing aren't doing what they need to be doing, as opposed to just recognizing that this is the fullness of who students are, especially at this developmental level, and we have to be ready to address that.
Oh gosh, I love that. Wow. We could probably do a whole webinar on that. I have some questions, but I'm going to hold off because I'm going to turn to Rhea and see what questions we have from the audience. And then if we don't have any, which I doubt, I'll step in and ask mine before we hear from our student.
Thank you, Maureen. And there are a ton of great questions actually from the audience. I think you all are giving lots of good fodder for conversation. One question that came from several different people is around which students are prioritized. Are there students, subpopulation student groups that are prioritized for eligibility? Is it, housing insecure? Is it students with children? Is it EOPS students? Is there another type of students? Credit, non-credit, excuse me, full-time, part-time. There are a lot of questions on who would be eligible and how you make those decisions for your programs.
Dr. Smith, do you want to go first, or?
Ours is a little bit different. I'll allow you all to go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we started, when we started this initiative, we looked at housing insecure students, those that we knew about, those that we could find out if there was a need. And through our basic needs office, as I said, we were in a friendly competition with them, and they had a rock star year where they went over 100 students that they were able to house through a grant that they have. And then we complemented the work that they were doing, also in partnership with Aspire and other entities that we have throughout Riverside County. We were able to house well over 300, near 400 students. So housing insecure was first. ELPS, CalWorks, well, not CalWorks, excuse me. I'll get to CalWorks in a minute. ELPS, TRIO, some of our other Promise program, foster youth. Those were some of our targeted groups. And once we saturated that pool, they had to meet certain GPA criteria, 2.0 or better. Max Pell would behoove this group as well to alleviate the cost and to have zero cost to use their financial aid. And then to be fully enrolled was really the criteria we used. Once we felt like we had saturated that pool, we moved on and asked the state, could we branch this out to other students that also had high need of different income levels? So we moved on to international students, we moved on to student athletes. Single parents is something that we will seek out in the future. The way this grant was written and the way this was sought out, it didn't cover that demographic, that very important demographic. And that's something for folks that are considering this in the future. If we would have went after single parents, we'd probably be filled by now because that's a very high need within our district and something that I know we'll look at in the future. Compton College, I know, has a model. I think they're building in 27, 28, and they'll incorporate parents, which I think is awesome, single parents in particular. And as you know, with 117 colleges, we'll end up copying each other. So folks will copy our model, we'll copy Compton, and we'll learn from each other on this. But yeah, so our categorical and grant funded programs, and then also casting a very wide net to our socioeconomically poor, housing insecure students was our first reach, and then reaching out to our international and student athletes that also had a need. As well, and they don't come with as much money as folks think.
Great. Anything to add, Dr. Smith?
Yeah, I'll say that, you know, for the one that we did at Dominguez Hills, that priority was those students on the wait list. And we also looked at how far away from our campus those students' homes resided to try to prioritize and make sure we had space for those who live the furthest. San Bernardino Valley is kind of going through that vetting and I think they're looking for students. I know they're prioritizing student athletes, but they're also looking for students who have a housing need, housing insecure, former foster youth, and ways that we can support on that front. I just want to echo something that Thomas mentioned that is near and dear to my heart as well, and that's housing for parenting students. A lot of community resources that we work with, a lot of housing in higher ed right now does not provide resources for parenting students. And so being able to consider how we meet that need is going to be really important. And I would also just throw in there that for a parenting student who's also working, that childcare is also a basic need, right? As we're talking about basic needs on our campuses. And so I've seen a lot of questions about why institutions are investing, you know, why should they invest money into childcare on their campuses? And I think for those parenting students, that is truly a basic needs coupled with housing. And when institutions can provide that, not only do they make themselves a resource for those students and their families, but also for the community as a whole, and bringing their families to our campus for a very vital resource. And so I think that's really critical.
Excellent point. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a moment. I'm going to turn to Dr. Cruz Soto and ask you to introduce our student guest.
Yeah, so we have 224 residential scholars within our program, and we have the honor today of being with Daeen Tobert, who has one of the highest GPAs at our college, is a state champion, a recent state champion, and is just a dynamic brother. And I'm just so glad that he took the time today to be a part of this. He's one of the things that are great at our institution, one of the students that are knocking it out of the park. And Daeen Tobert, you have the screen, sir, here to talk about your residential scholar experience, and then anything else you want to touch on about being a student within the Riverside Community College District. Again, thank you for being here, sir. I know you have a very busy schedule. I appreciate you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daeen Tobert. I'm a student at RCC, but I'm living here at the North District at UCR. And I believe it's a great opportunity to have. I know I have many other, like my parents, for an example, or my family members who came to RCC years prior and they didn't finish school at all, but they didn't have the support, they didn't have the needs that I have in this year. So like the basic needs and the resource center, that all helps, that all comes into play. Like to get groceries, that all comes into play because that's a support thing that nobody else had before that I have. And I'm very grateful to have that opportunity. And here at the UCR district, I feel I feel the need to want to go to a UC or a Cal State, mainly because yeah, I go to community college for 2 years, and it's free, and I have the same opportunities as other UC students, but in my case, I'm going here for free, right? And I see that they have a lot more like fun, more fun and more like studying ways on how they do it because everybody's really conservative at the at UCs. So like here being at UCR, seeing all the UCR kids moving to the dorms and stuff, seeing all of them, I'm like, oh, okay, like what's your guys' major? What are you majoring in? What year are you? And a lot of them, they're very like respectful, very nice, very kind, but very conservative as well. They're serious about their books. They're serious about their major, and that's mainly why I'm here for. Like I'm serious about my major. I'm a communications major. So my goal really is to become like a marketing businessman. So to speak from myself and to help people as well. And I also want to become a coach because I'm big on sports. I was a soccer player at Ramona High School. I have the record for the most goals over there at Ramona High School. And then I transitioned to cross country and track because I felt more opportunities in cross country and track. And my coach, he was actually a UCR alumni, and he told me to go to UCR, to RCC. He was like, go to RCC. They have a great program, great promise program. They help you with everything you need. And I was like, of course, my heart was like, I want to go soccer, but I know this is best for me. So of course I went to RCC, and of course I was skeptical. I'm like, oh, I don't know. But as I started to adapt into the RCC program, I was just like, I'm all for it. Like I'm grateful to be in the cross country community. I'm grateful to be in the track and field community. And I just know for a fact that I wouldn't have won a state championship ring if I was to go the soccer route. So there was just so many paths that opened for me that I didn't see before when I was in high school. Now I'm a sophomore and my academics is just as important with sports. My coach tells me, he was like, no colleges would want you if your grades aren't good. I was like, okay, so I had to make sure my grades had to be on point before I ever transfer out of a community college into a UC or a Cal State, because that was the main goal, to transfer, get that scholarship or get that academic scholarship, whether I go to an NAIA or a D3, D2, D1. It's just all that bases off of your grades and how good you are as well, but who you are as a person as well, leadership. So I just think this is a great opportunity, and I'm also staying with my teammates. So my teammates from the cross country team, we all have the same schedule. We all wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning to just go run our miles, come back, we eat, go to class, go to bed before 10 if we can, and just repeat the same cycle. So it's just a great opportunity, and it's cool because RCC is down the street. If we want to just go on a lazy run, just run around campus, just go see it. And I think it's just amazing just to be here, because I want to be that kid to be at a UC. Like I want to transfer already. Like I want to be a part of the groups. I want to be a part of the programs that you guys have at UCR. So it's definitely a great opportunity to be here. It's just awesome overall.
That is so great. Thank you so much. We're going to invite our panelists back in for one last question before we wrap up. But I really want to comment on, you seem like you've really created a community there. And that means a lot to you. You know, it comes out in your words that it means a lot to you. Okay, one quick question for all of you, including you, Daim. Before we wrap up, and that is, what advice would you give? Let's say there's people on the call today that are thinking about doing this, getting into these partnerships. They're a little daunted by the challenges. What piece of advice would you give to them as they set out on this course that you all have successfully traversed? Who wants to start?
I'll be brief.
All
And I
right.
said this already. Appropriate staffing. Having appropriate staffing in the beginning is critical so that we can best serve our students.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I think there's some great advice that has gone out. I'll just share that anytime we're asking leaders and managers to take on a project that is very complex and maybe even unprecedented for our campuses in our area, I think it's important that other leaders recognize that if they're overburdened and stretched with other duties, it's going to decrease the likelihood that they're able to think creatively and get outside of the box and work effectively with folks across institutions to solve those problems. So as we tap people to do this work, we should think about how we're maybe adjusting their work profile while these projects are going on, just because the research and all says that, like, when we have a heavy cognitive load, we are then more likely to find the easiest a way to try to solve something, right? That often makes it more complicated or is not in the best interest of our students. And so removing things from our plate so that we can really think creatively and work outside of the box and work collaboratively is going to be really, really important in order to have effective partnerships that truly benefit students and that aren't just opportunities that we say we have that are too bureaucratic or not financially feasible for students.
Yeah, and from our perspective, I think we're trying to approach this with a learner's mindset, and I would just sort of suggest that it's really important to ask a lot of questions and to ensure that the student voice is included in those set of questions. We have a couple of student surveys that are included so that, not only about the design process, but also just about some of the basic goals and that set the pillars. And if we can sort of come to alignment with our partners, whether they be in the Cal State or UC system, around the pillars, it's a nice to remember when we get stuck on the details, and there are so many details that we can kind of pull back. Remember that we're kind of looking for those mutual solutions based on those mutually predefined set of goals, and those are often the things that can help pull us through to the end.
All right. Last word, Diane. What advice do you have for folks?
I really loved what Dr. Sada has said about the student voices. I think students do have a great voice when it comes to anything that comes into the particular. Of course, not everything is going to be right by them, but it's good to get the ideas from them, and then to combine your guys' ideas as well. So that right there would just be on top. And also what Dr. Thomas Cruz Soto said about the staff members in the beginning. You can't have a winning team if you don't have leaders. So you need to keep focusing and keep trying hard to build up what you're trying to create.
Thank you so much. Really. So we didn't get to some of the nitty gritty. So not to put anybody on the spot here, but I'm wondering if maybe we could share some of the agreements that you were able to negotiate, Dr. Cruz Soto and Dr. Smith, with the audience. Maybe we can attach them to stuff. I'll follow up with you after this, but I learned a lot from going through those agreements and about how you worked out some of the, the more difficult things that you had to work through, quite honestly. And now they are, documented in MOUs. So if we could maybe use those to share with folks, I think there's a lot that could be learned. And now, again, thank you so much, Diane. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We really appreciate it. The folks on this call are really here for students. And of course, our panelists are all about student success. So it's always an honor to have a student with us, sharing with us their experience. And thank you. I can't thank you enough. And so I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it. I really love speaking to everybody, and it was just a great experience overall.
You're going to be a killer comms person. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Eve to bring us home.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it's been such a wonderful conversation. So thank you to our panelists, our research team, our incredible student for joining us today. We are honored to have spent this time with everyone in this room as well and hearing about the fantastic work that you are doing on your campuses to meet student basic needs. Before you head out, we would like you to take our a minute to complete our post-event evaluation. The link will be dropped once again. Thank you, Ryan, for that link. Please stay engaged with us and sign up for our newsletter for future updates. And for any questions or partnerships on supporting student basic needs with the Michelson 20MN Foundation, please feel free to reach out to me or to visit our website. Adding that in the chat right now. A recording of this webinar will be sent to you via email. It will also be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So feel free to send that link to any folks who may have had some trouble registering or other colleagues that you'd like to share this information with. Thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of your day. Take care.